Greetings and light. Welcome to the Fellowship of the Golden Dawn Universum's Temple Thoth-Isis orientation video. In this video, we're going to share with you how you go from being a candidate to being considered for actual initiation. Not just an aspirant, but somebody who is going to come forward onto the path and join us as one of our brethren. So whether you come here because you've stumbled across this website or researched the GD and you're making your first step, or you've actually contacted us and sent an inquiry in, and now you'd like to learn a little bit more about it, welcome. We're glad that you're here. I'm Sora Hava, and today we're going to explain what the orientation consists of in this video. You're going to get some next steps, some background on the order, what we offer, what we expect of our initiates and students, and where this path can take you with your perseverance. So first of all, we have a process whereby if you haven't made contact with us, you might want to start that initial inquiry. The email that you want to do for our Denver, Colorado Temple Thoth-Isis, which I'm representing here, is for the Midwest and the South in the US. So even if you're coming here from another location, you can always email me and contact our order or our temple through the Office of the Cancelaria, and you would go to thcancelaria@gmail.com or gmail.com, C-O-M. Okay, so that's where you make an inquiry. You tell me that you're interested in the order and that you either have or haven't reached the step where you've watched this video. After watching this video, if you still feel that you need further instructions, you can ask for us to set up a chat or a phone call meeting or something wherein you get a few further answers to your questions. But I've done orientations for a long time, and most of the general questions that we answer in those sorts of situations, I'll try to answer here, okay? After that step, after you know that this is what you'd like to do and you'd like to continue to pursue it, you would ask that I send you our formal application to the order and the neophyte vows. The formal application is based on some background information from you. We're going to get a little bit of personal information, your history, any formal study with any sort of religion or spiritual traditions you may have done with other groups or on your own, any sort of background as far as what religion or spirituality you were raised as, whether that changed and why, where you were born. For that sort of thing, we need, if you know it, it's usually on your birth certificate, especially if you were born in the US. It's your birth date and time and location. We don't use approximate time or location. As exact as you can get it is what we would use. If you don't have an approximate time or an exact time, rather, you would leave that area blank, okay? We use that for some background information. Also, any sort of history that you may have had, whether it's psychological or mental health related or substance abuse or arrests or anything like that, we ask that you divulge those things to us beforehand. It doesn't necessarily mean that you would be disqualified. It's just so that we know, because there are some things that we would have to just discuss with you and make sure that we're on the same page if we decide to initiate you, okay? Also things like how you feel about divinity, if you believe in a creator greater than yourself. That is something that we need to know. If you're still confused about that or unsure, that's okay, but maybe the path is not necessarily something for you right now. If you don't believe in something greater than yourself, then you may have a bit of a struggle trying to incorporate some of the things that you would do on this path or be exposed to. Okay. And nobody wants you to be uncomfortable or put in that position before you're ready to take that on. Um, and then there's the neophyte vows. So the neophyte vows are worded almost exactly the way that they were with the original order in the 1880s, okay, in the UK. We are a classical and traditional Golden Dawn order as much as possible, and we're going to use some of that exact wording, and that wording is there for some very important reasons, which I would get to a little bit later, some of them. Okay, we'll go over a few. After you sign the vows, the neophyte vows, which would be the first grade that you'd be initiated into, if we accept you and you fill out the application, you would submit it to me by email again to the same email that I mentioned earlier. You can rewind and watch that again if you need to. Then I'm going to compile a file on you based on your background and a few other things. And when we're getting close to having a neophyte initiation, I will submit that file when it is requested to what we call the Adepti Review Board. We have a group of adepts who get together and decide who is going to be accepted and who is not. Usually, denial or refusal to accept you is rare unless there's extenuating circumstances. Usually, you would either be accepted or deferred into our order. The reason for deferment is not necessarily of your own making as well. Sometimes we can just tell that there are some things that are happening in your life that initiation, the act of initiation, could actually cause your mundane or spiritual life or both to destabilize a little bit, or it could exacerbate some of those issues that you may be having or that may have not even occurred yet. So we don't want to put anybody in a position where they're unable to use the materials and the tools that we give them, any of the resources. So we try to make sure that you're in a place where you're prepared for that. If you're not, again, it may be through no fault of your own. And if you are deferred instead of accepted, it would be a situation where wait 6 months, maybe do some meditations, maybe make sure your life is together and you feel like stable and ready to take on this challenge after, you wait a few months and then try again, sort of thing. So for the 2021 year, we are going to have 3 initiations, and it may be the same moving forward as far as neophyte initiations for certain months. So we're going to do 3, one in January, one in April, and one in August. Okay. So again, neophyte would be the first grade that you're initiating into. Let me look at my notes here real quick. So another thing that we want to make sure that you have available to you, that I don't think it's in the actual application, but I used to ask it in phone call orientations, and that I would want to know from you in an email, is whether or not you have a personal space that you can utilize for your magical purposes were we to initiate you. Okay. Again, this orientation does not constitute an acceptance or a guarantee that we are going to initiate you into the order. It is just some informative information, okay? For the personal space, it doesn't have to be anything crazy. It could be a closet. It could be a bedroom that you also use as a bedroom. It could be just somewhere where you would be safe from any non-initiates, where people wouldn't be able to see you perform any rituals that we give you or any tools that we ask you to use in the grades that you go through, where you would just be comfortable and alone and have that quiet time reserved for your spiritual growth and connecting to the divine in whatever way you see it. Okay. What else here? We also want to know things like how safe you are within your relationships and your family and your community. Now, if you are under 18, we will not initiate you without a written note saying that your immediate family members or your guardians agree to this and they're informed about what's going on as far as what you're going to join, and it needs to be notarized. Okay. We don't want anybody coming in here with any false ideas. Their parents think they're at their friend's house and they're actually performing something, or, doing some sort of ritual practice that your parents might frown upon, or that may actually put you in any sort of physical danger based on your relationship situation with your guardians. Okay. Uh, as far as non-initiates go, we do not usually inform initiates about the order. All right. Um, it is considered a secret society to some extent. We do have oaths that we take in this order that you will be required to keep, be expected upon your honor to keep. And it's a situation where people can hear you if they're okay and they know that you're in the order. People you live with, say a partner or a roommate or something, you can tell them something like you're in the order. What you cannot do is tell them that anybody else is in the order, what names are of people. um, they can hear you practice, but they cannot see you practice. Okay. And you cannot teach them anything that we give you to practice. That is for your eyes alone and for your practice alone, personal use. Okay. Um, we also want to make sure that we know what your current religious and spiritual practices are, formal or informal. We want to know what expectations you have in any email that you're going to send me after watching this video. Why do you want to join the order? We want to know what your goal is, um, where you see yourself in this work, whether, you know, you feel called to do it, or it's a temporary thing, or, you know, you were guided here by some, I don't know, whatever it is. We come from very different backgrounds, and it's interesting and important to know what yours is, because we're adding your personal uniqueness to our society when we agree to let you in. Okay. We need to know things such as, have you ever felt that you are a danger to yourself or others? Where you are now with any sort of mental things that you've gone through, any sort of, and it doesn't have to be that you're emailing me a novel. You can give me some brief sentences. If I feel like I need more clarification, I'll reach out to you and we'll email back and forth. Or I might even decide to give you a phone call if we can find time to schedule that, to make sure that we're all on the same page. Okay. There have been times when I've had orientations with people and everything sounds like they they know where they're at and everything's great, and they understand what I'm the information that I'm giving them. And then I'll get an application and it'll say something about things that they never spoke to me about. And we're just going to need to know all of those things up front. Okay. We need to make sure, as a traditional Golden Dawn order, that our first priority remains the safety of our initiates in event and group settings and in your personal life. Okay. It's very important to us, especially now during everything that's going on, where most things are becoming virtual. Okay. Let's move on to what the order is. Our order, the Golden Dawn, or what's considered the Fellowship of the Golden Dawn Universum, our specific name, and our specific temple, the Temple of Thoth-Isis, is dedicated to utilizing a method of high magic to contact your higher self or soul eventually, and its divine will. So, the divine will of your highest soul, that part of you that is bornless, that is always connected to the divine, that is always unified to the divine. Um, we want you to eventually achieve what we call the knowledge and conversation with your higher genius, or the KNC. Okay. Um, for that, again, you would need to believe in a divinity greater than yourself for this to be of much use to you. If you're confused about that, I mean, we can have a conversation about that if you'd like to, because maybe you're not confused. Maybe you just have never tried to articulate it, and maybe you're feeling kind of agnostic or something. That's not horrible either. Like, you know, we're all right with different faiths, different ideas about that. Okay. Theurgy. Theurgy is basically God work or God magic. It is always connected to the divine. We utilize in this order a hierarchy. We always invoke from the top down. And there's a very important reason for that. Okay. So, with your persistence in this work, you should eventually peel back the veils and layers of the limits of your mundane and spiritual selves until you can unite with the truest part or highest part of your soul, so that you can fulfill the purpose for why you are incarnate on this planet at this time. Okay. So the theurgy is directed, or magic that is directed towards that purpose. Okay. It's not bending spoons. It's not doing stuff that elevates the ego. It is trying to have a personal spiritual connection with what you regard as divinity. Um, when I talk about a hierarchy, when we say that we invoke from the top down, so let's say you were, just for argument's sake, a magician who's self-taught, a magician who's done your own thing and it's been completely personal and you've never joined a group. We have people from all walks of life, so that could be totally possible. Let's say that you wanted to invoke something or evoke something, and you just decided to call upon that entity or that aspect of divinity that has these particular attributes that you're looking to utilize in any given scenario for a certain time period or a certain situation that you want to use. Okay. We will not, in our particular order, go and just invoke or evoke that entity in and of itself. There are always things on higher levels all the way up to the one divine, the source of all that is all encompassing. And we want to invoke from the highest down, because if we invoke something or evoke something that is in rulership over the entity that we want to work with before we invoke that entity, then if that entity for some reason has attributes that are of a mischievous nature or something, okay, we can always dial it back or reel it in and make it behave, if need to, politely and respectfully, of course, by calling upon that higher energy that is closer to the source and having that energy or that entity help us with utilizing that entity without it causing any sort of damage to our psyche, harm to our physical life or mundane life or anything like that. And now you don't need to be worried about a whole lot of that, because you're not going to be taught in this order anything that is going to harm you specifically. Okay. So you will be taught things in the order that you need to for your safety and for your development and to grow in a way that has been utilized since the first order and before the first order and many other systems back through time. Okay. So we're not going to let you start invoking like some sort of Babylonian god. off the cuff, okay, just freshly coming in, because you're not going to be able to control that entity's energy. And you don't want to ever be in a situation where you are subservient or something else is controlling you. Okay, that's not what we're about. The hierarchy is top down, and that's how you stay safe and protect yourself and utilize entities in a way that is going to actually function to make your life balance. The point is to have a spiritual and mundane balance and to become knowledgeable eventually about who who you are not, what limits you have and don't have, and how to get rid of the ones that you can, and how to connect with that divine source using the soul that has been given to you upon incarnation. Okay. And a quick note, you do not have to necessarily subscribe to all the things that I'm saying. Our order is hermetic. Our order has a basis, some of a basis in Kabbalah. And there's going to be aspects of it that may be new to you, that maybe you've not heard before, or if you have, you may not necessarily subscribe to them. That's okay. All right. You don't have to 100% be gung ho at the beginning. You should probably learn to understand what it is that you're working with before you decide, yes, this does work for me. Yes, I want to stay with this path. Okay. So there's not a lot of pressure in that you need to become like a Judeo-Christian right now or anything like that. Okay. If you're a Wiccan, if you were taught hoodoo as a child, or if you're coming from Mormonism, or if you're coming from, you know, Islam, any, Judaism, whatever, what have you. Okay. It's all good. All right. An egregore. So everything that you might ever join has an egregore. Now, if you're not familiar with this term, it's regarding a few different things, but it's basically like, let me give you an analogy. A group of people get together and they decide that they're going to work with each other. Let's just even say coworkers at work. Coworkers at work decide, maybe not even officially or formally, get together and they're like, okay, we're going to celebrate people's birthdays when they happen, and we're going to celebrate these holidays, and we're going to give each other gifts for these things. And here are the things we do, and here are the things we don't do. And eventually, those sorts of things kind of take on a mind of their own. Once you become a part of that group, you may feel like everybody kind of does this and they don't do that. And there's a little bit of pressure there. And, all institutions have egregores. All academia has egregores. The governments have egregores. There are ways of behaving. And sometimes these things have worked for so long, there's a lot of energy behind them from the various people contributing to it, that you've got entities that are overseeing it. Okay, so there's entities that have attributes for all kinds of things that are specific. You've got like saints for nurses and saints for patron saints for this, and there are things like that. So when you join the order, if you're accepted for initiation, you are being welcomed into our egregore. And so that's one of the reasons that you need to understand what's happening within the order, and you need to be okay with adding your collective energy and all of your history's energy to it, because you're going to be propelled forward at a slightly quicker rate than a magician who is not part of an order, because you're going to have all of our energy and our past history of working together for many years. Some of us have been around each other for decades. Everything that we've learned and studied, and magically, spiritually, in a mundane sense, the way that we've worked on ourselves, is going to be part of the circle of energy that you're going to be welcomed into as one of our brethren if you're initiated. So it kind of propels you forward through your work a little faster. And it's all helpful, but it's also like the order is going to have an egregore, and each temple is going to have an egregore, because our temples have bylaws that they all follow as part of the same order, but each temple has some autonomous abilities of how it's run. Okay, so Thoth-Isis, we have the patrons, our temple patrons are Thoth, the Egyptian god of magic, okay, and Isis, his first student, the first student of magic. And Thoth is very analytical, and Isis can be very mothery or very dominant, or the universal idea of feminine nature as well. So you've got those working together, and those will be part of your egregore. So you might find yourself becoming a little more analytical and or a little more Isis-like. She can be pretty chill. She can be pretty protective, and she can be a great student of magic. So Thoth is also like the writer, and teaches communication, teaches languages, all of these wonderful things. So the people in our temple tend to have these particular attributes that kind of enliven or quicken a little bit once they're part of that particular temple. So just idea about egregores and what they're like, and you know, choose wisely which ones you want to join. Okay. So something to consider. What makes the Fellowship of the Golden Dawn Universum unique? We are an international order. We have order-wide forums. We have order-wide chats on various platforms. We have some groups. We have class-specific groups and healing-specific groups, and different types of committees for different things, different projects going on with different people at all times. If you know anything about the history of the Golden Dawn, there are some chief, basically like activity directors, for lack of a better word, in certain areas of the order. And each of those, like the imperators or the praemonstrators or the cancellarii, they all have different things that are going on too. So there are a bunch of different things to join and be a part of. We're international. We have people all over the world. We have a website that has libraries for each grade, where you can we have like mini quizzes on there for each lecture. We have introductions to each lecture. We show you how to make the tools you're going to have to make. We have videos on how to do the rituals you're going to have to do. We have theurgy classes. We have audio chats that are recorded. Forgive my kitties. Event information. The temple websites are all connected to the main order website, so you can connect to the different temples if you want to, and your different brethren there once you get to know people once you're in. And we have mentor contact info, mentor proctor contact info. We have classes available for every temple. And actually, we're getting to a point where we're starting to, and it's been going on for a while, but we're still doing it, standardize all of the classes for each temple. So we know that each student in each grade, no matter what temple you're going to or part of, you're going to get the same lessons, because those of us from each temple are working together to make sure that the lessons are all things that everyone needs to know, that nobody's left out, and like this temple is getting this information, that temple over there is getting that information, and you just don't know how to do that particular ritual or meditation or lecture or whatever. Okay. So we have that. You can go to any temple at any time if you are an active member, and flights and pandemic permitting. So we come from, if you've read anything about the Golden Dawn, some Freemasons and some Rosicrucians, and all the guys were in the SRIA who were first starting everything. But I want to get back to the Freemasons for a second. If you know anything about Freemasonry, or if you are a Freemason, we've had some Freemasons in our order. There's a password or a couple different passwords that go along with things. So we change our password every 6 months on the equinox. We have special equinox ceremonies for the vernal and the autumnal, when the balance of light and darkness is even on this planet. Okay. Um, it signifies many different things, but at those times we change our order password. So anyone who has demitted or fallen away from order studies will not have the current password. But the password to get into the temples, unless you're in a certain grade and we're doing grade specific stuff, you'd have grade passwords to also get in. But the temple passwords are the same for every temple. And unlike the Freemasons, we do change them every once in a while. So you'd be able to gain entrance to any of the temples if you were traveling. Okay, stay with your brethren maybe. Let's see. The grade materials. So for each grade, we're going to give you a digital copy of a book of the grade materials. Some people have been talking about getting back to a physical copy. Right now, that's not completely feasible, but if you are an initiate, you are allowed to print off a copy for your personal use only from the digital copy that we give you. You just can't let anybody else non-initiate look at it, okay? So for each grade, you get the temple manual. It's got all the lectures in it. It's got all the rituals in it. It's got all the grade work in it. Each temple is slightly different. For our temple, we prefer to give you the grade manual that we've always given. And on the website, there's also, on the main order website, there also is a grade manual that you can study from. But for our particular temple, Thoth-Isis, that will be anything that you find in that grade manual that is not in the grade manual that we send you upon initiation into a particular grade. You're going to use our grade manual for testing and studying purposes. And the other stuff that you may find in the other manual on the website is going to be supplemental. Okay. Doesn't mean you shouldn't know it, but you may or may not be tested on it at a given time. Okay, so each initiate also gets at least one proctor or mentor, we call them now, to oversee on a, semi-personal basis your grade work, to make sure that you know what you're studying, to answer questions that you may have, and to help you. Now, you and your mentor are going to figure out a schedule that works for both of you. We tend to recommend once a month coachings or discussions about what you're doing and what your experiences are like. Too often, like some students are a little quicker and more easily digest the information than some others in particular grades. It's not always the case all the way through usually, but we don't want a mentor to not have a life, and they're people, they have families, work, school, their own magical practice. So talking to you more than once a week is not very helpful, because we need to be able to see as mentors the transitions that you're going through in your experiences, that you're actually growing and learning and utilizing your resources and your grade work effectively. So once a month is the standard. It could be a phone call, it could be a chat, it could be a Zoom meeting like this is on video. Your proctors could help you refine techniques. They could give you tips for certain things, that sort of help. Okay. The student proctor have their own circle, or as we would call it alchemically, an alembic, a hermetically sealed, closed vessel or circle between them. We also have one in the order. We also have one within our temple. But the one that you have between you and your mentor is considered extremely sacred. As an alembic, that particular circle is closed insofar as we are not allowed to, like, a mentor cannot go talking about you and your grade studies and your struggles or your experiences or your concerns to another mentor, to another student of someone else's, to your best friend in the order. That's not okay. Anything that we talk about to anybody else, let's say that I'm a mentor and I have a question regarding your experience that I don't have experience with helping you with, but I know another mentor who's had a student with the same thing happen. So I can anonymously go to that mentor and say, hey, I have a student who shall remain anonymous who is having maybe such and such issues. Or would, I know you have a little bit more expertise in this area. How can you help me to help my student? Okay. But we can't say, no drama, no pettiness. This is a spiritual order. We're not here to gossip. Um, yeah. So we keep that to a minimum. The only time that that can be transgressed is if you have expressed that you may be a danger to yourself or others, or you have broken some oaths and we need to get temple chiefs involved and or call emergency services. I apologize. My kitty is having a fit. Okay. You are not allowed to, as an initiate, choose your mentor. Uh, as budding spiritual mages, the goal is to eventually become balanced in all things, your mundane life and spiritual life, um, just all of your practices. You want to be balanced. You want to be what we would call hanging out on the middle pillar for the most part, okay? So if you're familiar with the tree of life diagram or glyph, we utilize the Kircher tree in our particular order quite a bit. Um, and the middle pillar is that area in the middle, not too severe, not too merciful. It's going to keep you in an equilibrated state. Okay. And now you're not always going to be in that state. As we go through the grades and stuff, you're going to have, corrupting influences and things, and you're going to have to balance those out and then move into the next grade, blah, blah, blah. But you want to be able to eventually interact and communicate well with all kinds of people. And sometimes you may experience having a mentor who is not somebody that you bond with immediately. And eventually you may. But unless the person is doing something that is illegal to you, assault, harassment, oath breaking, whatever it is, you don't get to change mentors on a whim. You don't get to come crying to our imperatrix that, the chief of our temple and say, hey, I just don't like this mentor. You need to learn how to work with all people and all things. It's about overcoming the limits of the natural life. Okay. So you don't get to choose your mentor. Also, mottos. In our particular order, we do use what we call magical mottos. Pardon me. The magical motto is a variation or version of what is considered your true name, the name of your soul or higher genius, that is divined by an adept right before you are initiated and used within the order to refer to you. Okay. We have heard that some orders allow people to choose their own mottos. We are traditional and we do not. If you're coming to us from very little background in this type of work, you may not know all of the values and associations that go along with your motto. Okay, so if you were to pick one, you could be constantly invoking something onto yourself, infusing it within your sphere because you meditate with your motto, you work with it through every grade, you write it on your tools, your magical tools in each grade. You don't want to be invoking something that you are not aware what that energy and that particular force is, and mixing it up with the things that you are trying to perfect, because you're technically an alchemical experiment, for lack of a better term, throughout this process. You are refining yourself from prima materia, okay, first matter or a natural substance, to something that is spiritual gold, okay? And through that process, you do not want to be infusing yourself or invoking upon yourself anything that could lower that vibration, okay, or that could contradict the work that you're trying to do. And some energies and or names might do that, and you might not know that, okay? So it is chosen for you by an adept based on connecting to your higher genius and saying, what would you like this person to learn and become, and what name would you like them to work with? And then within our order, you are called by that name. We have our spiritual name or our motto, and then we have our mundane name, which when we're outside of the temple, we use it. When we're inside of the temple space or inside of an event with other order members where it's all just initiates, we call each other by those outer order names. Now, when you get into the inner order, you will eventually be able to, at some point, you will connect with your higher genius, and your higher genius will eventually give you your true name, or the name that your soul has always gone by, that is not related to any particular incarnation, that is just the soul name, no matter where it incarnates or when, okay? And then that's how you would be known in the inner order, but only within the inner order. Whatever name you're getting from your soul through the adept divining it, in the outer order is what the outer order will always know you by. If you make it to the inner order, only the inner order will know your inner order name, okay? So let's move on to initiations. It's 2020 at the time of making this video, and there still is a bunch of stuff going on with precautions for the pandemic, okay? So in a year when this is not happening, we do offer physical temple initiations right now and for the foreseeable future. And if you're watching this a long time, many months or even years, I don't know how long this video will be on the website, but if you're watching it way in the future from 2020, you can always email me and say, hey, have temple physical initiations resumed? Right now, we are only doing astral initiations for the safety of everyone in the temple, with very few temple officers performing those initiations on your behalf, okay? So we are an order that does astral initiations. Some orders and some magicians are against this. We refer to the Emerald Tablet of Hermes, which you may be familiar with. If not, go check it out. It's amazing. And the second axiom that includes the phrase as above, so below. If something is being performed for you in the astral and or in the physical temple, and you live hundreds of miles away or right around the corner, it is still happening in that astral level, okay? Which means that it is eventually going to be filtering down into your actual physical area of your microcosm. So you are a full-fledged member of the FGDU, or the Fellowship of the Golden Dawn Universum, and of Temple Thoth-Isis when you have undergone an astral initiation, okay? And if you are accepted for initiation, I am the person, usually for our temple, who provides you with astral initiation information so that you can partake in that experience from wherever you are residing, okay? Let's see. So when you get through, let me back up. let's talk about the grade structure before I explain all of that to you. So let's go through the grade structure of the order in case you haven't heard of it. We have 3 orders. I am only allowed to talk about 2. The first or outer order that we have is called the Golden Dawn. The Golden Dawn consists of 5 grades. Neophyte, which is the first grade, or 0 equals 0. Okay, this is the first initiating grade that you come into the order in. The next one is Zealoter, or Zealotor, 1 equals 10. That is the grade of Earth. This grade is a precursor to any of the grades on the tree. So if we're talking about the tree of life again, this is the grade that is just below the beginning of the tree. And then when you finally step onto the tree and you're in Malkut, then you are a Zealotor or a Zealoter. The next one is the grade of air. That's the Oricus, or the grade of 2 equals 9. Then you move to Practicus, the grade of water, or 3 equals 8. And then finally to Philosophus, or the grade of fire, which is 4 equals 7. That's the Golden Dawn. Okay. These are all foundational grades, and we move in a particular order for a particular reason, many reasons, but a few of them that I can discuss here being your safety. You move from what is easiest to experience to what is most subtle, or what is most dense to what is most subtle to work with and to control, okay? Because you're going to have to learn to control each element in the grade that you're going into, okay? So once we get through those, then there is a 6th grade called Portal. Portal is neither a Golden Dawn grade nor technically a grade of the inner order. It's like being a neophyte of the inner order. You are again on a threshold just outside the veil of Paraket. Okay, so when you get into, that's the grade of spirit. So you've got the little threshold neophyte grade, which is very foundational, the elemental grades, and then the crowning grade of the elements, which completes your personal pentagram or your microcosm, the grade of spirit, which should exist in rulership once you're at least finished with Portal and balance all of the arms of your personal pentagram, okay, or your microcosm. So once you get out of Portal, you go into what we call the inner order, or the Rosicrucian order, or the 2nd order. Everybody who is in the inner order has been through the outer order, or the Golden Dawn. I'm not going to say what the inner order is actually called. You can go look it up. It's in many books. Everybody has been through that outer order before they get into this one, okay? When you are a Philosophus, or the 5th grade, fire, 4 equals 7, you should be master of all of the Golden Dawn grades, okay? But definitely when you're a Portal, and definitely if you move into 5 equals 6, the grade associated with Tiferet or Tiferet in the middle of the tree, okay? The grade associated with Christ consciousness and Buddha consciousness and Krishna consciousness and all of those things. So after that, I like to think of it, when I explained it to people on the phone for orientations, I like to think of it as the Golden Dawn is undergraduate school and the inner order is grad school. Okay, so in the outer, you are learning the foundations of magic and ritual and meditation and tool building and perfecting your pentagram and the microcosm. You're learning things on a microcosmic level. You're functioning within a microcosmic level, okay? You're not learning a bunch of magic that is affecting the rest of the world. I know a lot of you, and I hear this quite a bit. I know a lot of you are coming to us because you feel called to help other people, called to make the world better, called to heal yourself and others. It's very much like physician, know thyself. Okay. Magician, know thyself. If you do not study your own pentagram and your own limitations and the veils of your ego and your existence and the parts of your soul and what you believe and what you need to work on, and you don't actually do those things out here in the outer order, you get into the inner order and you can wreak havoc on the world. I know you want to help these people, the rest of us, the macrocosm, right? And should you persevere with these things, which is totally up to you and the journey your soul needs to take you on in this incarnation, you get to do those things and help other people in the way that you were born to do. Okay, you get to fulfill your great work to the best of your ability. But until you know yourself and you have mastered your magic here and mastered yourself here, like, you're gonna have to be pretty, I mean, we're human, we're not perfect, okay, but we need to try to be greater than we are right now or at any given time. We're striving, we're aspirants, we're always on the path, you know, we're always neophytes on the path, because we can't ever learn everything in this Freudian slip, anything, but we can't ever learn everything in this incarnation. Okay, so we're all still students, we're all still learning, but if you don't have this essential mastery, the foundations of these grades, you could cause serious damage to yourself or others. Now, I don't want you to take away from that you need to be afraid of this work. It's not that. You need to learn to be safe and competent, and then the adepti agree, okay, you have mastered enough that you can come into the inner order. Because here's the thing, guys, in the outer, you can test when you think you're ready and when your proctor's recommended that you're ready. It's usually when you find it like you're too comfortable in a grade because you feel like you've balanced all of the corrupt influences and there's no disasters happening to you and you feel like you're not overwhelmed by your work anymore. You're actually to the point where you feel like you've got a handle on it and you're getting kind of comfortable with it, and it's smooth, you know, it's the rough edges have been polished over and you're kind of ready to move on then. Okay, so your mentor and or you will kind of figure out when that's happening, and then you can test out. Now, each temple is going to do the tests a little bit differently. We prefer in our temple to do written tests. They are emailed to you. You have so many days to do them. Some things are open books. Some things are based on your honor from memory. You're going to have to write out like all the rituals, and the website explains all that. You're going to have to be able to say, these are the steps to all the rituals. This is what I learned in my meditations. This is how I do this. And then you email it back to your mentor. And the mentor will grade it. There's a rubric that we all use. We grade it. We say, yes, this person has passed, or no, you haven't. If you haven't, it's not a big deal. You wait 30 days, you test again. You study, you test again. But it would be a different type of test at that point. It would either be a freshly written test, so not the exact same one written by your mentor, or you might end up with like a phone test, or maybe even a Zoom test or a FaceTime test where you are speaking to your mentor and answering questions verbally and or performing for them the rituals that you are required to know, okay? And some of it will be like short essays on your experiences with certain things. So you can do all of those. You can test out of every grade, and they get progressively more difficult and more comprehensive. Yes, you're going to have to know things from previous grades when you go into another grade and take another test. They might surprise you in Theoricus and put in half neophyte questions. Okay, so you're going to have to learn in a compounding way and remember those things, or restudy them before you test each time. But when you get to portal being that neophyte threshold grade to the inner order, you can no longer test out. When you are going from neophyte through practicus, you and the imperatrix and or imperator or whatever, chief of your temple, let me back up. I'm a mentor, so I would grade my students' papers, and then I would submit that grade and those papers to my imperatrix and say, here's what I got. Do you approve or agree, or do we need to work on something? You usually need to get, depending on the proctor and their strictness, between an 80 to 85% to pass a test and be allowed to advance into the next grade. If you get a passing score and you still want to know what you got wrong so you can just know it, you can always ask your mentor to give you that information. You may be asked to resubmit those answers after a little bit more study. Depends on the mentor or the proctor. So then the imperatrix will grade it and say, yes, this person advances, or yeah, they can advance, but I want you to talk to them about this because this answer is unclear, something like that. Okay. Once you get to portal, the grade of spirit. Now, again, I talked earlier about how you can do all of these astral initiations through the outer and how this is how we're doing them right now anyway. When you get to 4 equals 7, right here, the grade of fire, Philosophus. Your test is going to be a 5-point test. You usually have to write 5 essays, projects, all these fun things, okay? And the adepts may look at this test. When you get into portal, your portal test is going to have a bunch of different essays and things that you write and projects that you do. And every single adept, when you test, is going to know about your test results. Why? Because you can test into all of these grades, even portal. You cannot test into the inner order, 5 equals 6, or the grade associated with Tiferet or Adeptus Minor, okay? You cannot test into that grade. You have to be unanimously invited by the body of Adepti to join the inner order when everyone agrees that you're ready and that you've mastered it. It is not a politics and popularity contest, okay? This is, do you know your information? Do you practice regularly? Is it part of your life in an ongoing, consistent manner? Are you safe to practice? Are you safe to be given more higher grade, macrocosmically affecting magic to work with? Can you teach this information correctly, safely, effectively, and traditionally to students? Okay. Those are the things that everyone needs to know. Are you a good influence or a bad influence? What kind of mentor are you going to be? What kind of adept are you going to be? So you can test into all of these things astrally through portal. They prefer your portal to be in person, but here's the thing. If you are getting ready to go into the inner order, and that's what you want to test into next, you have to have all of your physical initiations from the outer order grades completed. They need to all have been physically attended and interacted, okay, by you. So we're doing a bunch of astrals now. You can live all over the world, wherever you need to be, and not have to come to temple. It's not required. Unless you want all those physical initiations for portal. You've got, some grades to think about that. But if you want to go into the inner order, you have to have all the physical initiations done. Now, I said earlier, astral initiation makes you a full-fledged member of the FGDU, of our temple, Thoth-Isis, and everything filters down. So why do you have to have the physical initiations? The sensory drama of your body and your sphere of sensation, as we call it, or you might know it as your aura, you need to physically experience the initiations as well. You need to engage the senses, you need to engage the psyche as well before going into all these things, because you're going to be teaching people what that's like. And when you become an adept, eventually you're going to be conducting those initiations to some degree or other. Okay. When you get into about practicus, the 3 equals 8, the grade of water, the 4th grade, that's when they start wanting you to maybe teach a class now and then, maybe co-proctor or co-mentor with a senior mentor, listen in on phone calls or assist with being there for students and answering questions. You have to start taking on more responsibility the further up that you get. That happens even more when you get into Philosophus, the Grade of Fire, and definitely Portal. You cannot advance into our inner order in this order without being a mentor or a teacher in some capacity. We need to know that you are capable of transmitting, like Kabbalah, from mouth to ear, this information to the students that we have coming forward, because when you get to the inner order, you take oaths for life. That's not required of you before you're in the inner order, okay? You take your oath for each grade. You take your oath to enter the order initially, which is basically the neophyte oath, and there are a few other ones in the initiation. And you can, if your soul is telling you to go in some other direction, you may stop doing magic altogether. When you go into the inner order, that is a lifetime commitment to monk out, you guys, okay? It doesn't mean that you necessarily have to stay with our order if your higher genius needs you to go and perform your great work in some other capacity, in some other place that is not related to the order. However, you're agreeing to keep pursuing your higher genius and your great work in a way consistent with the order for the rest of your life, every day, ongoing, okay? When you get to the inner order, the idea of it being like grad school is that you have more dispensation and more mastery of things, that you can go into other specialties and gain an emphasis or expertise in a few subjects or one subject that you're really interested in. So, for example, in the outer order, you learn things like foundations of ritual, Golden Dawn ritual style, okay? You learn foundations of meditation, foundations of healing, foundations of astrology and divination. We do both tarot and geomancy in the outer order in different grades. You learn some astral projection. You learn some scrying abilities higher up. You learn a bit of spiritual and physical alchemy. You make grade tools. You work with different entities. You learn about angelic hierarchies and Kabbalah and all of these things. And you work with them according to the grade you're in, okay? When you get to the inner order, you have all of that foundational knowledge that you've built up from the outer order. And then you get to work with things on the macrocosmic level and a little bit closer to manifestation, a bit more of actual magic, okay? But you have to learn all these foundations. You have to learn what corresponds to what before you can do all of that correctly, okay? But then you can go to almost any tradition and know where certain things fit on the tree of life in that tradition, which correspondences from that tradition will blend properly with correspondences from our tradition, if you wanted to mix them for your own personal use, or if you wanted to teach some of that tradition, how it corresponds to our tradition, to our adepts or to our order, things like that. Okay. In the inner order, you're going to learn things like um, planetary magic, zodiacal magic, a little bit more alchemy. If you're into it, you know, you could specialize in alchemy, or you could specialize in, you know, like you'll have a vocation of some sort. You'll have chosen something with the help of your higher genius, and you'll be working towards that. Maybe you are leading a temple. Maybe you are, you know, really into Kabbalah, or really into astrology, or really into um, Enochian magic. So here's the thing about Enochian, for those of you who know about it already. We do not, for your safety and for the safety of others in the order, teach Enochian magic or anything to do with Enochian until you are in the inner order. Until you've had 7 initiations, we do not consider you safe to practice Enochian. Plus, you need to know all the correspondences and be able to use them fluently of the outer order to successfully practice our version of Enochian. Okay. So we're not going to give you any information about how to make wax seals. We're not going to give you any information. You come to us with a book about John Dee, we may be able to tell you about his life story and the angelic language. Yes, okay. But if you come to us with a bunch of symbols or a bunch of things and you're learning it with your conscious intellect and your psyche can't integrate it because we can't technically teach you about those things, it's going to cause a disruption in your psyche. Okay. You cannot fully integrate and control those energies until you've had 7 initiations, as far as our tradition is concerned. So you could be left wondering. And here's the thing about the order that I didn't mention earlier. Yeah, you can read a bunch of books, but that is only going to give you 20 to 30% of this work. Most of it is personally experiential. Okay, so like 70 to 80% is mouth to ear. And sometimes that's from us to you, if we're your mentor. Sometimes that's from the entities to you. You are going to get, you know, your personal sacred information from the entities that you work with. And we have entities, like I said with the egregore before, we have entities that work with our order, that are assigned to work with and have agreed to work with our order, and ones that have agreed to work with our temple, and ones that have agreed to work with initiates in certain settings or in certain grades. Okay. One thing that I need to mention about that is we work with the Egyptian pantheon in the outer order and the inner order. So if you're coming to us from a tradition or lack thereof where you are against any sort of pantheistic workings, we do not worship them in the way that you might in a religion. Okay. There's not really any worship. They are symbols, images, archetypes of ancient attributes and energies that have a lot of energy that's been put behind them for thousands of years. And we tap into it and they become our helpmates in certain grades, certain elemental uses, certain purposes, certain whatever you need. Okay. There's usually an Egyptian god or goddess for that. And you will not be introduced to any in any grade unless they are ones that you are supposed to use for that grade. Once you're introduced to them, you can use them in the subsequent grades, of course, but you're not going to be introduced to anything like set in your first grade or anything. Okay. We're not going to allow you to work with something that you cannot completely control, and you're going to learn how to protect your sphere first and how to protect your energies first and your own self, so you're not ever channeling, nothing's ever taking control of you. Some people come to us with the idea of channeling, and that they've done it before and they really want to keep doing it and that sort of thing. And something that you ought to know is our particular initiations and our particular practices tend to diminish the tendencies and abilities of someone to channel. Why? As a Hermetic order, we are focused on this being our final incarnation. Whether you subscribe to reincarnation right now or not, it's not a big deal. Okay. Don't have to agree 100% with what I'm saying, but here is where the stance our order takes. If you are allowing, as a being with all of the elements, earth, air, fire, and water in the Western tradition, with spirit on top, your personal pentagram, okay? If you're trying to perfect it as much as you can as a human incarnate in the outer order, and you are allowing something to come in and take over you, then you are not in control of your pentagram, which means you are to some degree corrupting or inverting your pentagram. And we don't do anything that does that. We consider ourselves to be the only beings that have 5 elements in this particular makeup, with spirit crowning earth, air, fire, and water. Okay. So to let some other entity that may only be air and fire, or that may only be something with a particular set of attributes, and you have the range of attributes within yourself, to have a soul, to have a little spark of that divine oneness within you, to let that thing or that entity, respectfully, take over you and control you, is inverting your pentagram. And again, we work from the top down, and we always keep that pentagram upright. Okay, so our practices are not going to tend to make that easier, but you're going to learn how to do things that are just as amazing. Okay. Okay, what else? Residency requirements. So you can, some people just want to test out of neophyte whenever they want to test out a neophyte or any grade. Okay. Until practice, that's okay. Even if we're not coming up on an initiation for that grade, if you feel like you can test out of the grade and you want to, go for it. Okay. We usually need you to test, if you're going to do it to advance, we usually need you to test at least a couple weeks before we're planning an advancement. And that way everybody can make sure that you're on the list to advance and everybody agrees on your score and that you've actually passed your test and that sort of thing. If anything needs to be clarified, there's time to do that. So residency requirements tend to begin at practicus, or 3=8, the water grade. The traditional requirement is to stay in that grade for 3 months. Again, we're very traditional, and your safety is our primary concern as an initiate. So we need to make sure that all of the energies that take a certain amount of time to infuse themselves in your sphere of sensation and affect you and get you through the work in that grade that you need to do, have time to do that. So there's a residency requirement for that grade and then up. So for Philosophists, the grade of fire, you have to stay in that grade a minimum of 7 months to let all those fire energies do their fire thing and perfect themselves within you. And then in Portal, the grade of Spirit, the 6th grade, you have to stay in that grade a minimum of 9 months, same as gestation, because you're technically moving from one life to another life when you go into the inner order. It's just like when you come out from being a natural person or a mundane person without the spiritual component of this work, working towards your great work. When you're first initiated into neophyte, you're lifting the veil on that too, and you're becoming You're going into a new life from outside of the temple to inside of the temple, right? And then the same thing happens when you go from outer order to inner order. So that period of gestation, like you would in the womb, that's the idea. Okay, let's see what else here. So the inner order and ideas of Christ consciousness. When you go into the inner order, you take some Rosicrucian vows. You take a vow to keep the temples up and running, a vow to heal for gratis or for free, and a vow to give the light to those who feel called to join. So, to keep the temples up and running, we do have dues in our order, and each temple gets to autonomously decide what their due structure is going to be based on their location. They may be most of them are in urban areas, so the costs can be different for different things. But the adepts, and that's why going into the inner order is a big deal, a life deal. The adepts take a vow to keep the temples up and running no matter what, to keep the order up and running no matter what. So the adepts do not pay dues because they have to do things like, if the temple dues are not coming in, they might have to sell a car, a home, a beloved pet. They might have to put things on eBay. They might have to take a second job. That is the sacrifice that they make when they become adepts, to make sure that when you come calling because you feel it's the time to be initiated, that is available for you. It's serious. It's a life decision, okay? And you don't have to go into the inner order if you don't want to. It is a two-way interview. You're finding out from them what they expect of you, and they're finding out from you if you're willing to do those things. To heal for gratis. There are a bunch of different healing techniques in our order. We even have a Kabbalistic version of healing that is similar to Reiki. It's no touch. It can be done remotely, things like that. You usually have to learn that in person with qualified teachers. And there are versions of different things in the grade books that are a little more personal as far as healing goes. But if you're an adept and you agree to that and you get the call, you're taking an oath that, if there's an emergency somewhere, you're going to drop everything and do some healing work for whoever it is for whatever reason, especially if healing is one of your things, as far as emphasizing that in the inner order or one of your specialties. You're going to use your expertise and be called upon before others possibly to do that. Okay. So, and keeping that's part of it. Keeping the temple open, keeping the temple healthy, doing work to protect the order on a macrocosmic level, to do magic basically for the rest of your life, and to always be striving to give back as far as teaching and mentoring and conducting events and, leading those before you with the light, like the light of the Carracks. The adepts go before the outer order. They are the ones who will be initiating you because they've gone through the outer order and they've mastered it. You can actually be an officer once we start having physical meetings again in the temples. You can actually start being an officer as soon as neophyte. You could be like a sentinel or something. And as you move up through the grades, you could be different officers, and you'll find out about that. That information will be in grade books and in classes. So it is a big deal to take those oaths and to decide that this is your life and you're going to give it back, your time and your energy and your sleep and whatever it is that you need to do to help the next people on the path who need to connect with the divine. Okay. When are you allowed to start a temple, a sanctuary, or a study circle of your own? Depending on your grade, you can start a study circle as soon as you get into the order if there are people around you who live, and want to practice and hang out with you, do ritual with you. A study circle can be any grade members getting together, few as two, as many as you think you can handle in a meeting situation. The only thing that we require in our order is that the lowest grade present is the material level that you have to keep that group meeting at, or that group ritual at. So you're not going to have a neophyte with 3 philosophi and do a philosophist ritual, because that's parting the veil, and you're taking an oath when you enter those grades not to do that to those who come before you, because they need to come at the pace that is correct for their soul. We don't skip grades in this order. You may have mastered another tradition. We don't know what happened during that, so we don't know that you are safe to work with our things to that level that's higher than neophyte starting out, or anything else. We don't know what you know. We don't know that you're safe with it. We don't know that your psyche is balanced, because that's not our tradition. So when you come in, you have to go through it. Okay. Let's see. When you can start a sanctuary, you usually have to be a philosophist to start a sanctuary, or a portal. You can start a sanctuary somewhere where you can have a sanctuary as opposed to a study circle. A study circle could be anywhere. You can meet in a coffee shop and just talk lowly, okay? Or you could meet at somebody's house and do rituals together. A sanctuary is a freestanding temple. You would have a room somewhere, or a garage, or a rented space that is always set up in temple setup, according to Golden Dawn temple etiquette and things like that. And you would have group ritual there, you would have group classes there, and the higher grade members, like the philosophists and or a portal, if you have one, it's nice to have one of each at least if you can, will be leading some of those things. Okay. When you can start a temple dispensation to start a temple can only be given by the body of adepti to other adepti. So they're giving it to themselves. They get together, they decide if it's the right time, if you have a patron, if it's the right location, blah, 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 all these things. And it takes, a handful of adepts to start a temple, and then at least one adept to keep it up and running. Even if you had officers, except for like the Hierophant, who are of the lower grades, you would still need a few adepts to consecrate a temple, and at least one to keep it running. So you can't just go start one because you got a grade book in neophyte. You don't get dispensation to do that. That would be oath breaking. Okay. Alchemical transformations. Let's talk a little bit about the things that can happen to you in each grade. So different things will happen in different grades, and they're not guaranteed to happen to you in a spiritual way. They're not guaranteed to happen to you in a physical way. They're not guaranteed to happen to you at all, but they may. So you may have, for example, a change of home, a change of job, a change of spouse, change of state, a change from school to work or work back to school when you're in the earth grade, because it is the grade of physical manifestation and things related with mundane situations and finances and things like that. Also, sometimes these things will happen in other grades as well, but traditionally, if it's going to happen to you, it tends to happen in the grade that associates with the element that is corresponding element. Okay, so in the air grade, you may have problems concentrating, you may have problems learning languages, communicating, working with technology, writing, all of those sorts of things, kind of being an airhead, quote unquote. Okay, and in each of these grades, you just plug through your work and get a little help from your mentor, and you can overcome these corruptions within yourself. But it's like once you're initiated into a grade, the things that you need to become aware of are the things that are going to creep into your perception, and you're going to have to deal with those things to move on. Okay. In the water grade, you could be dealing with a lot of intense emotions. You could be dealing with crying a little more often, feeling a little more depressed, or feeling a little more empathetic or sympathetic to people. You could also be dealing with actual water in these grades. You could be dealing with the element itself. You could be dealing with earth and air and water. You could be dealing with, anything that sort of relates to that. Um, in the fire grade, same thing. Fires, you know, ambition, enthusiasm, passion. Uh, so when it's in its corrupted aspect, you could experience arguing or fighting with people that you didn't in other grades, or that you never did, who are very close to you, or just you could be irritated all the time, or that's what it might show up as in a manifesting corrupt aspect. And another manifesting corrupt aspect, you could start fires. When I was in the fire grade, I caught things on fire all the time, and didn't know how I did that. But it it will be different for each person, and there's no guarantee that all of these things or any of these things are going to happen to you. Okay, it's just a possibility that I don't want you to be surprised by. In the neophyte grade, you're starting to increase your vibration, you're starting to protect your sphere and light it up on the astral plane. Okay, and as you move up the grades, it's getting lighter and lighter and brighter and wider, and your sphere of sensation is just becoming magnificent and clean and clear and wonderful. I don't mean technically clear, just metaphors. So sometimes what that means in neophyte or in some other grades is that you could attract people to you who you don't know or who've never been attracted to you before. And I don't mean like romantically either. I mean like people you don't know could just walk up to you and be like, I just enjoy being around you and I don't know why. So it could be things like that. Also, there could be in any grade people that you're close to, that you've had really solid relationships with until you join the order, could just leave your life or could just not get along with you anymore for a reason unbeknownst to both of you. And something you need to understand about that is people's souls need them to experience certain things, and sometimes people are in a different vibrational level or in a different place in their incarnation, in their own great work and in their own path, and they don't necessarily need to be next to you on your path. Maybe it's too intense for them after you initiate. Okay, or and I know sometimes we think, oh, we found the way and like the order's so great, and like, or having this close personal relationship with the divine in whatever way it manifests itself to us is so wonderful, and that's great. But also other people in your life have the right for their souls to learn at their pace. We're not pushing you through this order. You can decide I'm testing now or I'm not. As and we need to extend that same courtesy to non-initiates. Okay, they're not joining the order. It's not something that they necessarily need to know in this life just because you feel you do. It's not necessarily for us to correct any practices or beliefs that they have because they're occurring to you. We need to be humble and think that if there is a divine out there and they are allowing us to experience what we need to experience for our soul to progress, what's to say that this person is not experiencing, this other person in your life, any of them are not experiencing that in their own way? Okay, it's important to be able to let some people go, even if they're close to you. um, may not be forever, may just be for a grade or a couple months while you're dealing with corrupting aspects of your own equilibrium, you know? So we need to be okay with other people's ways being okay, because our experience is valid to us, but we haven't had anybody else's experience, and their experiences and their path is valid to them too. And it is not necessarily for us to heal the world by making everybody think like us, right? As far as the order is concerned, you have the right to your beliefs and the right to be respected for not having the same ones as the person next to you or the family member next to you. And nobody needs to be prodded toward this path if they are not into it. Okay. Um, Dues for the temple, Temple Thoth-Isis. As I said before, dues are different for every temple, based on autonomously what they need to cover for their expenses. Our temple's dues are $120 a year. You are expected to pay at least, I mean, depending on when you join, there would be prorations, but you're expected to be able to pay that prorated price. And then at the next equinox, which is when for existing members we collect dues, you're expected to pay $60 for a 6-month period or $120 for a whole month period. And if you think about that, that's $10 a month. Okay, it's not a big deal. When I first joined the order years and years ago, it was twice that. So it's actually gotten better, and that's what it is. Again, the adepts do not pay for dues, so you only have to go through the first 6 grades for that. And the way that it works is those dues cover everything that is typical of the order for that time period that you pay them. So let's say you pay for a year, you pay $120 at the vernal or autumnal equinox for that year. That's going to cover every initiation you have that year. That's going to cover website access and your materials as far as digital grade books and classes and things like that. What it won't cover is if we have an event and you're traveling and you're lodging and you need to eat while you're there and you need to buy tools and you need to buy candles for yourself or you need to buy regalia for yourself for in the temple, it's not going to cover that, okay? Anything that is optional, it's not going to cover, but it will cover the rest of the stuff. Except for regalia. Regalia, you really have to decide if you're going to make it yourself or if you're going to buy it. And we have resources in either direction. Once you're initiated, we can give you those resources, okay? Oh, we also have a temple monthly newsletter for active status people. It gives you forum and website and chat access and all those things. We usually use Venmo. In fact, I think that's solely what we're using now. We are a nonprofit organization, and we have to be able to keep all of our account information and transaction information in one place so that we try to be as transparent as possible so that if at any given time you want to know where your dues are going, The Imperatrix and Cancellaria can pull up your dues information and provide you with a statement of where it's going so that you know none of us are profiting off of this. This money is not going into anybody's pockets. It's for rent for the temple or heating and air for the temple, because that's always good to have. And anything for physical initiations and events, candles, incense, what have you, the things that we need to keep the temple up and running, lighting, a bathroom, whatever it is. Okay. So you need, if you think that you want to be initiated, my advice to you, if you don't know about Venmo is like a associated with PayPal. You just download the mobile app onto your phone. I don't think that you can download it onto computers as much anymore. It's usually considered just a mobile app, and you connect an account to it and you can pay for things immediately with it. If you're accepted for initiation, I'll give you the information about whom to pay dues to, and when and where, and all of that fun stuff. But become familiar with Venmo, because that is the one way that we keep all of our financial records accessible and in one place and transparent for you. Okay. Leaving and falling away or demitting. So if for some reason you find that your life is destabilized by the work and it's overwhelming to you, and we respectfully ask that you come to your mentors and or temple chiefs first and see if we can help you figure something out. Okay. And if you can't, or if you're just done, or if your path is just in another direction, that's fine. We'd like to conduct an exit interview with you if at all possible, to make sure that we try to serve and help you to the best of our abilities, and that it's not our fault that you feel like leaving. But you are basically allowed to leave when you want. We do not teach or practice revenge magic. There's no repercussions to leaving, unless you do something horrible. You steal somebody's identity, you may get taken to court. That's how it is. All of our materials are like copyrighted and private, so don't put them up anywhere. That's pretty simple. So we ask that you do the exit interview either with your mentor or an adept that you trust. And know that your higher genius can continue your path or work with you in your current grade, even after you leave the order. So let's say you leave the order in, I don't know, any of the grades. You can leave the order and continue to pursue your spiritual path in another direction. And it could be a situation where you're going to keep experiencing some of the same things over and over if you're not actually choosing to pursue your spiritual path in whatever direction. If you just like made all these oaths and then you stop in a certain grade, that doesn't mean that your stuff stops. So that's nothing that we can control. If you're initiated into a grade and your higher genius is like, well, you still got some corrupt air to deal with, then you still have some corrupt air to deal with. And you're going to keep experiencing some cyclic patterns possibly in your mundane life, if you just have a mundane life from then on, until you deal with it spiritually. Okay. So know that that is a possibility, not a guarantee, and there's nothing that we can do about it. We don't remove initiations and from you when you leave. We don't demit you in grade when you leave. You just leave and you have those initiations and those grade materials for the rest of your life if you choose to keep them. Like, you're that grade, at least at our temple. There is another temple that would make you start from scratch if you're gone for so long. Okay. our policy for dealing with students as they fall away. First, if your proctor is not contacting you at least once every, I don't know, 90 days, you can address that non-contact by talking to temple chiefs. Okay. That doesn't mean that they need to be calling you every week, by the way. Once every 90 days, especially if they know that you're not doing your work and you're not trying to contact them. They don't have to hunt you down. This is your path and your responsibility to contact your mentor. They may choose to contact you just to see if you're okay, but they're not required to until this falling away or demitting policy starts to take place. Okay. So you need to contact your proctor every 90 days or pay your fees if you haven't to remain active, have integrity in your commitments. Like, we are all volunteering our time to do these things. So take responsibility and have the integrity to not waste your own time and not waste our time and not waste your soul's time. Inactive status at 6 months of inactivity, we place you on inactive status. We remove you from the forums, the chats, and the only way that you would be able to come back is if you contact your mentor or proctor or the temple chiefs. Okay. And they may not let you come back in right away. It may be that you have to work one-on-one with your mentor or the temple chiefs for a while until they decide that you're okay to be on active status again and let you into the chat rooms and the classes and the forums. Reason being, if we haven't had any contact from you, even though we've reached out to you in 6 months or more, we don't know if you've been doing your work. We don't know if you're safe to be in a setting with other initiates who regularly are doing their work, or if some corrupting aspect of the grade you're in is going to have an effect on you that is harmful to our other initiates. And again, safety first. So we have a 1-year reconnect contact policy. Within that 1 year, you reconnect with us and you're doing your stuff again and everything's fine and you're paying your dues, you can come right back in and everything will be fine. After 1 year of no contact, you are demitted. And if you wish to rejoin, you will have to start the application process over again. And you will be interviewed by an adept, at least by one adept, not one who was your proctor. If you have an adept proctor, we also have proctor or mentors who are philosophi and portals to see if the order has not served you to the best of its ability and whether you should be reassigned to a different proctor if you're coming back in after a year, or whether you have substantially stabilized your life such that you could come back and have a greater chance of success, because that's what we want for you. We want you to be able to use the resources and tools and materials that we give you. Okay. Neophyte vows. Go through real quickly because I realize this is a really long video and I need to eat dinner. The neophyte vows, when you read them out and you sign them, if you're going to get the application of vows after you watch this video, and they're again listed in your grade materials when you get them, sounds like you're making these oaths to the order. Not really. You are making these oaths to your higher genius and the part of your soul that is connected to divinity. This is a serious set of agreements that you are consciously agreeing to, which is why we have you sign them. If you do not understand them, you need to contact us and make sure you do before you sign them. One of them is the extreme passivity clause. So I want to break that down for you a little bit. The extreme passivity clause, paraphrasing, is something like, I will not subject myself to be suffering under, any form of extreme passivity, hypnotism, drugs and alcohol, mesmerism, blah, blah, blah. What that means is you do not want to be under the influence of something that can make you break your vows, any of them. So if you need some psychological counseling and your psychologist wants to do a form of hypnotism on you for purposes of your health, just let your mentor know. Usually it's not a thing where like you're going to be hypnotized and you're going to start talking about the order. Okay. If you're going and legally drinking with a friend on a weekend or something, just make sure that you're keeping control of yourself and not enough that you're not going to divulge everything the order has taught you to this non-initiate in the middle of a situation like that. Okay. We're not saying that if certain things are legal in your state that you cannot do them. We recommend moderation in all things. You can ask your proctors about what that means and the vibrations of different types of substances to see if you're not allowed to ever come to temple on any sort of substance that is not prescribed to you for purposes of your health by a doctor. Okay. So there's that too. Then there's the no defamation clause. We have to respect every type of belief system, especially those involved in our order. Even if we do not necessarily agree with them, we are not allowed to defame anything that anyone else considers to be sacred. That's serious. If you and your frater or soror friends make fun of each other's religion or the way you grew up or whatever, and that's between you guys, and that's fine, that's great. But if you come onto a forum or a chat or you start talking badly about this group of believers and that group of believers of whatever situation, that's going to be considered oath breaking and you will be sanctioned for that. You may lose forum privileges. You may have to be one-on-one with your proctor and not be able to be in a group setting at all until they're sure that you're not being overcome by a corrupting influence of your grade. Because grade, some of this grade work can make you do stupid things, but you grow. So I like to tell all of my candidates that I'm not the same person that I was even last year. And I've been in the order for a long time. And every year I'm like a different person. There's also the anonymity. You're not going to tell anybody about any of us, any of our personal history. You're not going to steal anybody's identity. You're not going to go tell another order about any of our personal names and occupations and things like that. And you're not going to put it on any social media. It is not order based, and you're allowed where you're given dispensation to do that. Okay. There's also a legal redress for abuse that is not typically put in there, but I always tell people this in the orientations anyway. Let's say someone in the order is doing something illegal to you. Heaven forbid it be any sort of assault. But if they're stealing your identity or they're harassing you or they're stalking you or they're doing something that's unhealthy where obviously they are not doing their work or they are just doing something that's completely illegal and unhealthy, what we ask that you do is not create drama. Because again, the adepts have to keep the temples up and running no matter what. So we ask that you tell it, like if it was your proctor or your mentor or something, tell an adept, one that you trust, what is going on. Allow them to question and clarify with you what it is, and then allow them time to go tell the other adepts what is happening, who need to know. Nobody who doesn't need to know will know this. And the rest of the out order probably wouldn't be told. And then allow them to magically protect the order and magically protect you and extricate this person from the situation, extricate you from this situation, and extricate whoever's doing something to you from the situation and possibly sanction them or expel them from the order. And then once all that is done, they can come back to you and say, you now have the ability to redress any legal abuses against you. And if you need to take somebody to court, we are 100% behind you in that, and we support you. Okay. We just have to make sure that the order continues to work and function in the way that it's supposed to. What the order is not. We are not a cult or religion. We have been investigated by the FBI, and they have not found us to be any of those. Okay. We're on the good list. We do not conduct any form of sex magic. There's no skyclad anything. We are not a substitute for psychological counseling. Your mentor is your magical and spiritual big brother or sister. Also a student like you, but someone with a little more experience who can help you through the grade that you're going through because they've already been through it. And they may have guided many other people through it. That doesn't make them a guru. That doesn't make them, yes, there are some people in our order who are technically qualified to give certain types of advice. Are they going to do that for you? Probably not, because that would be unprofessional and a breach of whatever kind of ethics we're talking about, possibly. If you need psychological health counseling, go get it. It doesn't mean that your proctor or mentor won't listen to you, but they're going to notice and confront you about if you're saying the same thing over and over and they don't notice that you're utilizing your grade work to help your life change. Okay. We do not teach revenge magic. We do not teach anything Crowleyan or Thelemic or a left-hand path. Again, that would be inverting your personal pentagram, which we do not do, and possibly not working from the hierarchy in highest to lowest fashion, and we do not do that. And we are traditional again, so anything that has been like substituted or reworked by any left-hand paths or any other types of Golden Dawn orders where they add in some other elements of different forms of, you know, pantheism or what have you, or polytheism, like we're very traditional and it's probably not going to happen that way here. We're not going to teach you or practice or condone anything that places your will above divine will. We are not a mundane magical order. We do not teach parlor tricks, spoon bending, and learning these things would be a waste of your time anyway. The universe does not waste anything. So if you do not need to learn a language, you will not have time to learn it. If you do not need to go over here, the door will shut to you magically and physically sometimes, and you will have to go over here. When your higher genius says no or yes, that's what happens, and welcome. We are not a social club. We practice magical theurgy. Yeah, sometimes we get together and eat after a ritual because you know what? You can get hungry. But this is to help you connect with something that will actually satisfy, if it is the path for you, satisfy your life to the degree that nothing purely mundane and sensory ever has. And you have the right to have those experiences in a safe environment. And you have the right to be taught to be competent in those things and to not have to worry about anything to do with repercussions for being curious about learning about whatever God is to you. Okay. We have a policy in our particular temple It may be order wide too, but we've actually written ours down. If you come from another religion or magical practice or belief or are interested in developing one while in the outer order, um, you may be asked to forego certain practices that could affect your personal transformations in this system until reaching a grade where you have a good foundational understanding of the Golden Dawn system. This will be up to your mentor and the temple imperatrix. For example, maybe you have to wait until Theoricus or 2 equals 9 or slightly above to practice hoodoo if you decided hoodoo was your thing. Or if you decided, hey, I want to join a Gardnerian coven of Wicca, you know, maybe one thing at a time because too many things mixed about in the stew or the alembic or the sphere of sensation that is you could be discombobulating and exacerbate some problems in your mundane or spiritual life. And the whole idea is to be balancing those things, not to be adding everything in. Like, you don't need to join every society. In fact, sometimes that doesn't look the greatest because it looks like you're searching, 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 not finding or not having your ego's way about joining those things and getting whatever you want to do from those experiences. So you just leave and go to the next one. Your ego is controlling you. Pick a path and follow it and decide, give it a really good effort. Is it your path? You know in the back of your head it's not, then why would you even go there? Just because you're curious? You could read a book if you're curious. This is serious, and I don't mean to be super intense and crazy on you or anything, but it's serious and it's beautiful and it's wonderful, and anything that you're imagining that could happen, that could be, an upheaval of the life that you have right now. Yeah, if you're comfortable, it probably will feel like that. It'll feel a little bit chaotic because you need to encounter chaos to learn how to be resilient to it. You have to encounter it magically as well, and not in a way that's harmful. And that's why you would follow the path the way that we have it set up for you, because we have walked this path and we know that it's safe. Okay. Many people have before as well. If there are no other temple or order members near you, you can connect with them through Zoom. You can connect with them through the chats, through the forums, through stuff like that, as long as we're doing this. If you have people who live near you or a few hours away and you're willing to travel to hang out with each other and perform things and get to know each other, you are totally welcome to do that. Order members are not interchangeable with members of other orders. A lot of people come in and think that they've heard of us in certain places where we don't actually exist as a temple yet, or as we don't have a presence in some of these places. Our order is called the Fellowship of the Golden Dawn Universum. If you find a website or an order that has a different name, maybe not the temple name, we have different temple names, it's not us. And order members are not interchangeable. You can't go talk to some Golden Dawn people over here, which may be perfectly nice and may actually be friends of our order. In fact, maybe we know them, maybe we hang out with each other at events sometimes or whatever. But you can't go tell them all the secrets that you learn in our egregore, because they have their oaths to keep, and you have your oaths to keep, and the egregores are different. They may have different entities working with them. Again, it's the mixy thing. You don't want to mix too much. You can be friends with them, sure, but are you going to practice your magic with them? Probably not, because you don't know what they know and they don't know what you know, and you can't give things away. You can't teach other people something, and that would fall under that heading sometimes, or most of the time. If you are finding us and you do not live in the Midwest or the South of the United States, or you live in another country, but you found us first and you want to be in our order if you get initiated, you can still email me, thcancellari@gmail.com, and I can put you in touch with the temple that does oversee your location or your country or your area so you can get started. Okay. You're not out of luck because we're located in the Midwest. Um, so the path of an initiate, some of the last things I want to talk about real quick. The path of an initiate is one of sacrifice and service. You come here from having studied a bunch of other things. You feel like you've got a good grasp on a lot of the subjects that may be included in our order. You still need to come into our order if you really want to initiate and choose this path with us, particularly. You need to come in humble, and you need to come in with a curiosity and an openness to experience. Okay. It's going to be new for you no matter where you come from and what knowledge you already have. Depending on how much book reading or other things you've been involved with different groups or orders or different practices, in order to learn our tradition, you may actually have a little bit of a tough time because you may have to unlearn some of the things. You may have been in another tradition that thought all of these things corresponded to these things over here. And our tradition may be like, nope. And then that might be tripping you up, and you might be stuck on those ideas of what you learned first because those are comfortable, right? That's the path energy took once before. So it's comfortable to stay there. And it doesn't mean that that path is wrong and our path is right, or vice versa. It means in order to learn our tradition, you have to be okay to be first a good student in order to become a good master of this tradition. If it's what you really want to do, if you really want to become a hermetic magician and perform your great work in this way in a group setting and with other people helping you through it. It's a solitary path, yes, but you have other people who have tread it. And so the way is worn enough that we can help you along at some points, right? But these are a lot of personal decisions to consider. You come in and you're like, I know everything about this, and ha ha ha, and you're interrupting us when we're trying to talk to you, and you're, I know. And you haven't listened, and you haven't read your grade work, and you haven't done the experiential work and the actual meditations. That is your ego, not the highest part of your soul, your ego. The intellect can be in love with itself. And it's very humbling to have people come and want us to help them on this path. But if that is what you truly want, then allow us to help you. Allow yourself to have the curiosity and the wonder of a child experiencing something new for the first time. You may know some of these things, but your experience within this egregore and this tradition with us will be new. It's like making a new family, you know. If you want in, try not to squander it. Try to really get out of it as much as you can. But you're also here to give back once you get to a certain level. You have to bless those who come on the path after you with the light that you have been graced with. And the last thing I want to say is there are a few book recommendations, whether you're deferred instead of accepted right away for initiation, or you just want to get a head start and learn a little bit. I mean, they're a little bit dense, but there is the Kybalion, Kybalion, the Kybalion. It's usually considered to be an anonymous publication or by 3 initiates. It is part of the New Thought movement written in the early 20th century, but the aspect there, we don't use all of it, but there are some principles and aspects of it that we do use that align with the Emerald Tablet and all of the different magical things that align with our tradition. So take a look at that. You can also look at A Garden of Pomegranates by Chick and Sandra Tabitha Cicero. They are in another Golden Dawn order of a different type, but they are also our friends in the Golden Dawn community, and they're not going to lead you off the path just because we're in different orders. That is a good beginner's book. Um, there's also the Kabbalah, spelled K-L, no, sorry, Kabbalah, Unveiled. You can start to read that, though that is probably the most dense of them, just to get a basis. Kabbalah is one of the foundational aspects of our work. And you can get started on some of those things and see what you think. See if it's for you. No matter what you decide to do from here on out, may the divine bless your path. Thank you.